Welcome to Pavinar's Webinars for the Payment Community. My name is Andrew Bram, and today we're going to talk a little bit about project management. Project management in itself is relatively simple. You just need to make a plan and stick with it. However, we all know it is not quite that easy. I've developed a couple of keys to project management. First, you need to work on your skills, and this includes communication, time management, problem solving, organizational awareness, and diplomacy. Another key to project management are the steps to project management, and that includes initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and closing. And finally, tools to project management. And I'm going to propose 3 tools. There are more out there, but these 3 seem to be the most popular, and that includes Gantt charts, logic networks, and PERT diagrams. Let's go through each one of these keys to project management in detail. For project management skills, communication is absolutely critical, and that includes clarification, providing updates, and communicating results. Time management is also very important. When I think of time management, I think of personal versus professional time management. I think of managing your project schedule and also managing time during meetings. Meetings can be an absolutely essential part of any project, but I think we've all sat through meetings that we feel could have been a little shorter and more efficient. Problem solving is another important project management skills, and that includes breaking down the problem, identifying the root cause of the problem, and then developing an action plan to solve that root cause. You then need to execute the action plan, and as you're executing, you may need to modify it based on the monitoring of your action plan. Organizational awareness is also very important, and this means that you need to know how does your project overlap with other projects in your group. So if you're in a laboratory setting and you both need to use the same piece of equipment, how are you going to manage the fact that there are other projects that are also trying to use that piece of equipment? And we can do the same with resources such as undergraduate research assistants, other graduate students, postdocs. All of these type of things are resources that we need to share with multiple people in our groups. And then finally, diplomacy is very important when you are dealing with project management. And this includes negotiating what you think is important and understanding what other people think is important, identifying what your priorities are and what other people's priorities are, and then also working with many different personalities. I encourage you to take a moment to pause the video, go back to the previous slide and ask yourself the question, which skill do you want to improve on the most over the next year and why? And just take a couple minutes reflecting on that. Next, we'll talk about the steps of project management. First, you need to initiate a project, and that includes defining and identifying the scope and goals, thinking about any sort of constraints and risks that are associated with the project, and also thinking about who are the stakeholders, what people will be impacted by this project, and how will you need to interact with them. You need to develop a plan, and this includes building a roadmap. A big part of roadmaps are identifying tasks, deadlines, and resources necessary in order to execute the plan. After you develop the plan, you then need to execute the plan itself. While you're executing it, you need to monitor your plan. Are you keeping up with your timelines and deadlines that you established in the plan? What sort of resources are you actually using versus what you thought you would use? And how are you coming along on all the tasks? And are the tasks interfacing with each other as you thought they would? Then finally, when the project is completed, collecting the data, getting the data analyzed, you need to close the project, and this includes deliverables. And deliverables can include anything from a final report to an implementation plan, ideally to a journal article and to either a thesis or a dissertation. Often there are presentations incorporated with the deliverables as well. Similar to the previous discussion, what step did you see on the previous slide that is the most daunting, and why do you feel it is the most daunting? And again, please feel free to pause the video and go back to the previous slide and reflect on which step you believe is the most daunting. Finally, we'll talk a little bit about project management tools. First, start with your Gantt chart. You can see an example of a Gantt chart on the right, and this is where you display a task list graphically over a timeline. So you can see the tasks in the left-hand column. Along the top rows are dates, and then you can see when the tasks are supposed to be executed. A logic network shows a sequence of activities over time. So there's some sort of starting and ending point, and between those two, you have to think about all the activities, how you want to order those activities, and how those activities interface with each other. And then finally, a PERT diagram. PERT stands for Program, Evaluation, and Review Technique. And this is where you schedule, organize, and coordinate all your tasks. And this is something that I remember from project management, where you have these tasks in a row, some are dependent on others, and each task is anticipated to take a certain amount of days. Like the previous two sections, I encourage you to pause the video and ask yourself which tool will you implement for your research? Or if you're already using one of those tools, do you want to perhaps try another one of the tools? Now you've noticed that there have been 3 breakouts for this Pavinar, and I encourage you to do 2 things. First, encourage people that you work with to go through the similar exercise and compare your answers to the answers of others in your group, because I would hazard a guess that you all feel like you need to work in different areas, and I'll encourage you to build off each other's strengths. Ask the people you work with, why did you feel like you were good in this area but needed some work in another area, and vice versa, and you can build off your strengths as a group. I also encourage you to revisit your breakout reflections in about 6 and 12 months from now and ask yourself the question, did you make progress? It's one thing to watch this and say, oh, that sounds like a great idea. Maybe I'll work on that. It's another thing to actually write it down and then check yourself in 6 months and check yourself in 12 months to see if you've made progress. So a recap of project management, you need to work with skills that includes communication, time management, problem solving, organizational awareness, and diplomacy. The steps to project management are initiate, plan, execute, monitor, and close. And then I went over 3 tools, Gantt chart, logic network, and PERT diagram for project management. So thank you for joining me today, and thank you to my lab group. This was taken last week. I gave a very similar presentation that gave a lot of good feedback, and I hope that you all enjoyed this Pavinar.